You're listening to Entertainment Extra. Now more with movie critic Richard Crouse on In-Depth Radio. News Talk 1010.
Is this Count Frightenstein?
Yes, it is!
Hey, movie lovers and citizens of Earth, welcome back to Extra Entertainment Extra. I'm Richard Crouse. Terry Hart has toddled off back to TMN, but joining me in the studio, I have a very, very special guest. Anyone who grew up in Southern Ontario and beyond, because this show has been seen everywhere now, knows the name The Hilarious House of Frightenstein. It was a formative show for me. It changed things for me. I was obsessed with this show. And joining me today is Mitch Markowitz. He is the Canadian television executive who began working on this show as an associate producer and portraying the characters of Super Hippie and Mosquito. He also was the executive story editor on Best of the West, worked on many projects as a writer, including Van Dyke and Company, MASH, Best of the West, Report to Murphy, Buffalo Bill, Crazy People, and Monk. And you are now a real estate mogul in Toronto.
Well, I think that's overstating it, to say the least. But thank you.
You're welcome.
And nice to see you again.
Nice to see you. Listen, I'm so excited to have you in. Tell me, I want to talk about The Hilarious House of Frightenstein. This is a show. There were 130 episodes done. They were done very quickly. And yet, for the last 40 years, it has maintained a profile. It has maintained a life of its own. Why do you think that's true?
I think at the time it was relatively unique. I mean, there was not another show like it. I don't think there's been another show like it since. It had sort of mass appeal. It appealed to kids on one level. Mm-hmm. Although certainly our largest audience was college age.
Yeah.
They saw a whole different show than the kids did. Their parents even enjoyed certain aspects of it. So it was like a shotgun effect, if you will. It appealed to everyone. And it continued to appeal to them through the years. It's been on actually slightly more than 40. It's going on 44 years now.
44 years.
Yeah. So it's got a life of its own.
When you look back, what's the first thing that you think of when you look back? And I mean, it could even be something abstract as, the long hours of, sitting in the studio with Billy Van while he improvised or whatever it might be. But what's the first thing that grabs you when you think back of that?
I'd like to say the first thing I think about are the pleasant memories, but it's not true. The pleasant memories came for the last 43 years.
Right.
The first year, the year we were in production, was a very, very difficult job. Putting that show together in the amount of time within the budget frames that we had was very difficult. It was a very long, arduous job. We were putting in 18-hour days, and this was long before we ever got to the set. Mm-hmm. This was during the period when we conceived the show. We wrote it. We rewrote it. We dealt with finding the right people to play the right parts. That was difficult because we didn't start off with Billy as the Count. We started off on a whole different direction and found that, unfortunately, that didn't work out. We originally had thought that from a sight gag point of view, the funniest thing would be if we got Igor, who we knew right away was going to be a great big monster guy, right. And if we could find a little person, as some people refer to them now, to be the Count. And we finally found somebody. We searched all of Los Angeles and New York and all through Canada. We finally found somebody, Guy Bigg, who ended up playing the part. And I don't think that was his real name, by the way. And Guy was we thought perfect. He was 31 inches tall, and it was a perfect sight gag. And then we started to rehearse with him, and they came over to the house every day. We were living in a mansion on Royal York Road in Etobicoke, right. And that's where I had all the writers sequestered in individual rooms. And I started to work with Guy and Kingfish, the nickname of Fishka Reyes, the guy who played Igor. And it just wasn't working out. He just wasn't funny. And regardless of how many times I said, "Now here's how you read the line," it's "Don't call me the Count," or he just couldn't do it.
Right.
So eventually we decided, my brother and I decided, that we had to get rid of him, which was a very difficult chore. And since My brother was the producer, and I was the associate producer. We drew straws, and I lost. I was the one who had to tell him that he wasn't going to make it, and we decided we'd pay him anyway, and we'd find him another gig, and we ended up making him the mini count. And it was a very, very difficult job putting the show together. So the good memories were the ones that followed.
Yeah, and you say you had no money. But
no, I didn't say we had no money. I said to produce the show within the confines of the budget.
Of the budget.
Yeah, we had a reasonable budget. When we sold the show, we got a substantial amount of money in those days.
Yeah.
I mean, Channel 11 had never produced anything even remotely close to that that large show. But our goals were quite lofty. I mean, we wanted a fabulous set, and we wanted this, we wanted that, and we wanted a great wardrobe. And when we decided how big the show was going to be and how many characters Billy was going to play, it required an enormous amount of makeup, and we realized that we couldn't find the right makeup people here, so we had to reach out and go to New York and get prosthetics made. I mean, everything cost money, and it all added up very quickly.
My guest in studio is Mitch Markowitz. He was the associate producer and one of the creators of the hilarious House of Frightenstein, a show that I can't even imagine how many hours I've whiled away watching this show.
Well, thank you for watching.
At different stages of my life, as a very young person, as someone who watched it late at night with the other college kids, and even now, you can see it all over the place on YouTube. And you were saying in an email to me, there's over 2 million hits or something.
Over 2 million hits on YouTube, all sites combined.
Yeah. And, I mean, this is something that for a show 44 years old really does have a life of its own. We have to talk about Vincent Price and how he became involved in a show being shot in Hamilton for CHCH. So,
just before we go there, let me tell you a quick story about college kids. Speaking of college kids, in some markets in the United States, in California as an example, we were on opposite the Johnny Carson show, The Tonight Show. And we outrated the Tonight Show because we had a college audience. So at 11 o'clock at night, those kids would all get stoned and they'd turn on their television sets. And we captured that audience. I mean, that was quite a feather in our cap. We could not believe that we were outrating the Tonight Show.
But you weren't, that wasn't by design, though, in terms of like capturing the stoned college students. You were looking to entertain the kids, right?
Do I have to agree with you? No. I mean, we knew at the time that what we were writing and the way we were delivering the lines, the humor was far above the minds of kids. Right. I mean, they appreciated the sight gags. They appreciated some of the little educational episodes. But Griselda was obviously fashioned after a drag queen who happened to be our secretary at the time. We knew right away that this was aimed higher than children.
Mitch Markowitz is my guest. When we come back in the next segment, we're going to talk about Vincent Price. Vincent Price, for me, when I was a kid, that's the thing that really first made me aware of the hilarious House of Frightenstein. I thought, well, Vincent Price is on this. I had read about him in, my Famous Monsters of Filmland magazines, the Monster Times, all this stuff, seen all the movies. And I thought to myself, here he is on this Canadian show. How cool is that? So that, I think, is the thing that brought me to this. And I wonder, probably to a lot of people were originally brought to the show because of Vincent Price's bookends and the poems and things that he used to read on the hilarious House of Frightenstein. So we will continue that conversation with Mitch Markowitz when we come back on a little extra, Entertainment Extra. Stay with us.
It's Extra Entertainment from Entertainment Extra with Richard Crouse on In-Depth Radio, News Talk 1010.
Hey, movie lovers and citizens of Earth, welcome back to Extra Entertainment Extra. I'm Richard Crouse. Joining me in the studio, Mitch Markowitz. He is the associate producer of a show, one of my favorite shows, a show that I've watched virtually my entire life, the hilarious House of Frightenstein. And I thought, as we're getting nearer to Halloween, it would be appropriate to have you in to talk about this. And we wanted to talk about Vincent Price because, as I was saying just before the break, so exciting for me as a kid to see Vincent Price and to know that he was on this wild Canadian show that I love. So how did that happen?
Well, I have to tell you, it was the thrill of my life to meet him and to work with him. I mean, I also admired him growing up, watched all of his movies. How did it happen, did you say?
Yes.
Well, when we went to make the sale to Channel 11, they were interested in the concept of a kid's sort of horror slanted show, and they liked the theme, they liked us. I mean, everything looked like it was going to go, but we didn't get a green light. We didn't get a contract signed. And we went back to Toronto and thought about this and said, how can we guarantee this is a shoe-in, if you will?
Right.
And obviously the idea came out that the way to guarantee that was star value. I mean, if we had a big star, Channel 11 being Channel 11 would obviously be all over it. I mean, the only claim to fame Channel 11 had at the time was their movies. Sam Hepshire, the guy who bought all their movies, had terrific connections and got better movies than CFTO and CBC and whatever. So we started thinking about who we could get, and there were only four bad choice of words. There were only four huge stars in that genre: Boris Karloff, Bela Lugosi, Lon Chaney, and Vincent Price. And Vincent Price seemed like the best prospect. I mean, he was wonderful. He did other movies, not just horror movies. He was articulate and handsome, and this. There were all the good reasons pointed to Vincent. So we got in touch with him, and we told him we were doing a kid show. He had never done a kid show, he said. We told him we'd get him in and out of the city in 2.5 days, and we offered to pay him. Yeah. So you put all that together, and he said, you know what, it sounds interesting. I can do 2.5 days. I don't think he'd ever been to Toronto, and the thought of doing a kid show was quite alluring to him. So we made a deal. He came up. We wrote the segments for him. He came up. Do you know the story about when he first came?
No.
He came. This is very interesting. We learned a valuable lesson that we've never forgotten for the rest of our lives. He came up. We had his segments all done. He did all the intros and extras for all the various segments, as well as the intro and extra to the show.
Right.
And we got on the set. We got through, we did some socializing and what would you like to see and what would you like to do. We got on the set. My brother was directing from the bus. CHCH didn't have an actual booth at that time. They had a bus outside. And I was on the floor. I was actually lying on the ground right beneath the balcony where Vincent Price was standing. And I would hand him up whatever prop I thought was appropriate for that particular bit that we were doing. We did about 20 minutes worth, and my brother got on the PA and said, Vincent, Mitch, we have to have a meeting. Came out onto the set and said, Vincent, you're just not scary. And Vincent looked right back at him and said, listen, you want scary, you have to write scary. Has to be on the paper. So we talked about it for a couple minutes, and we realized he was right. These were all cute bits we had written for him. They rhymed, they were sweet, they weren't scary. So we got the writers back, locked them into a room, and said, you're not coming out of the room until you rewrite all 130 episodes. And about 30 hours later, without food, water, or toilet breaks, they came back out and said, it's done. We got Vincent back out onto the floor, and the rest is history 43 years later. They were scary. He read them scary, and he's been scaring kids, adults, teenagers, everybody for 43 years now.
My guest in studio is Mitch Markowitz, who just told a very cool story about Vincent Price and the hilarious House of Frightenstein. When we come back in the last segment, I've heard a number of times that Vincent Price had bought beer for the cast and crew. I want to find out about that on a little extra Entertainment Extra when we come back, so stay with us.
This super show will return in a minute. 58 seconds, 59. What does it all mean? It's all relative.
Entertainment Extra continues with movie critic Richard Crouse on News Talk 1010.
Hey, movie lovers and citizens of Earth, welcome back to Extra Entertainment Extra. I'm Richard Crouse, thrilled to have in studio with me today Mitch Markowitz. He is the associate producer and one of the creators of the hilarious House of Frightenstein, a show that's been entertaining kids and Stone College students and everybody else for 44 years. We've only got a few minutes left, so there are a couple of things I'm going to get to. Vincent Price bought beer for everybody, bought Labatt 50. It doesn't get much more Canadian than that.
No, that's
Could you
very
tell me
true.
the story?
Sure. He was actually the gentleman of gentlemen. Yeah. The first thing he did when he came onto the set was walk over and shake hands and introduce himself to all the guys on the crew. Now, I've worked with stars before, celebrities before, and generally they come over and say hello to each other, right. Maybe to the admin people or the other cast members, but to actually go over and introduce himself to all the crew guys was absolutely fabulous. And he said, is there anything I can do for any of you guys? Would you like autographs? Would you like pictures? Can I do something for you? And then he actually went out and came back with, I think it was 2 cases of beer. And nobody has forgotten about that for 40-odd years.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to run into some of the guys and they say, can you remember the day that Vincent Price came back with a case of beer for us, or 2 cases of beer? And he had one with him, too. Well, you know, he was just one of the guys.
One of the guys,
over those couple days.
An enormous star and one of the guys.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about working with Billy Van. I'd met him a number of times. Such a lovely guy and so talented. Yeah. And these shows, 130 shows, you did quickly. Mm-hmm. And I can't imagine the amount of pressure that must have been on him because he played 18 different characters, I think. And I mean, it's an incredible testament to his work.
He is the most talented performer I have ever worked with. He was absolutely unbelievable. He could do anything you asked him to, and it took him maybe 5 minutes to morph into the character that we gave him. Yeah. You know, we said, you're going to do this, take a look at read a couple of lines, come back, turn around, and he was that character. And he actually was that character. He was the Wolfman. He was Griselda. He was the librarian. Yeah. He believed it. I mean, he was actually that character. Fabulous guy, fabulous actor, fabulous comedian, very fast wit. And like I say, he was able to do anything in it with a split-second notice. And you couldn't put enough work on his back. Mm-hmm. I mean, we'd come up with another character. We did a bit where there was a gorilla, and my kid brother would throw a tennis ball or ping pong ball at the gorilla's head and knock him over. And we tried it a couple of times with one of the prop guys in the gorilla outfit. Wasn't funny. We realized right then you can't just put a prop guy into a gorilla outfit. So Billy got into the outfit. Next thing you know, the gorilla was funny. In a gorilla costume, Billy Van made it work. He was a great guy.
Well, and that shines through. Even 40 years later, these things are still funny when you see them. And if you look at the comments on YouTube, look any of this stuff up on YouTube. You can buy it all on DVD. It's all out in the world.
It's out there.
I had a look at some stuff just quickly yesterday. I was really looking around. I wanted to really put this in my head. And the comments about Billy Van are a lovely testament to a lovely guy and a real talent.
Absolutely. I'll tell you a quick story. Another touching on those college kids again. My son went to the University of British Columbia. My wife and I went out there with him to sort of get him settled. When we left, as soon as we left, he went downstairs. He was on the 4th floor in the dorms. He went down to the 3rd floor where the common room was. And when he walked by the common room, the kids were all sitting around watching a big screen TV. And unbelievably, they were watching Hilarious House of Frightenstein. And as he walked into the room, I flew by. And he said, oh, my God, he said, oh, my God, that's my dad. And all of a sudden, he was treated with a whole new reverence on campus.
Well, that's right. Super Hippie is a memorable character. Flies through the air wearing a Superman costume and sort of speaks in non sequiturs, I guess.
All 110 pounds of me with a huge blonde afro wig. Never lived that one down.
My guest in the studio has been Mitch Markowitz. There's so much to talk about. We got through the Hilarious House of Frightenstein. Next time you come back, we have to talk about The Last Will and Testament of Rosalind Lee.
Very scary movie.
Yeah, very scary movie by Rod Gadino. The phrase, close your eyes.
Close your eyes.
Yeah, we'll stay with you for a while. That's your tagline in the film. And we'll stay with you for a while. We'll get to that. And then at some point, we have to talk about the Markowitz Hollywood North Museum, available by appointment only. In your home, you have incredible things, Marilyn Monroe's dresses and Liz Taylor's gloves and all sorts of Hollywood memorabilia. I would love to have you back to talk about that some other time.
My pleasure. It's been great talking to you, Richard.
Thanks so much, Mitch. And that's it for this week's Extra Entertainment Extra. Thanks for joining us.
The castle lights are growing dim. There's no one left but me and him. When next we meet in Frankenstone, don't come alone.